Is Olivia Parker, 32 years old, and I never thought I would have to choose between my mother and my life. The day my vision blurred during a client presentation, I had no idea I was having a stroke. Mom agreed to drive me to the ER, but what she did next shattered everything I thought about family. A week later, when I won $500 million, her sudden reappearance taught me that sometimes the greatest fortune isn't money, but the clarity to see people for who they truly are. Before I dive into my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit subscribe if you believe family should never abandon you when you need them most. Growing up with Catherine Parker as a mother wasn't what Hallmark movies are made of. From my earliest memories, love always came with conditions. When I was 6, I brought home an art project from school, a messy finger painting of our family. My teacher had written creative across the top with a gold star. Mom glanced at it and said, "Couldn't you have at least stayed inside the lines? This looks like something a 3-year-old would make." That was the first time I remember feeling like I wasn't enough, but definitely not the last. Our home was beautiful from the outside. Mom kept the lawn manicured, the curtains matched the throw pillows, and family photos showed perfectly coordinated outfits at every holiday. But inside those walls, appearances mattered more than feelings. If I cried, I was too sensitive. If I succeeded, it was never quite good enough. An A-? What happened to the plus? Became a familiar refrain. My father, William, left when I was 8. For years, Mom told me it was because I was too much work and he couldn't handle being a father. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? Children trust their parents to tell them the truth. So I carried that weight through elementary school, through middle school, through high school, the belief that I had somehow driven my own father away by simply being me. Catherine was the queen of subtle cruelty. When I was 13 and developed faster than other girls, she commented on my weight constantly. "Are you sure you want that second dinner roll? Your jeans looked a little tight this morning." At my high school graduation, when I received an art scholarship, she told relatives, "It's not a real major, but at least she's going to college." These paper cuts to my self-esteem accumulated over years. Despite everything, I tried desperately to win her approval. I became the peacekeeper, the one who apologized first, who swallowed her feelings to maintain harmony. I helped with dinner without being asked. I maintained straight as. I never went through a rebellious phase. If I could just be perfect enough, maybe she would finally see me. After college, I built a career as a graphic designer. Not the real job Mom wanted for me, but I was good at it, building a modest client base through a small agency in Boston. Still, at 32, I was living paycheck to paycheck in a one-bedroom apartment with secondhand furniture. Student loans and the competitive job market meant financial security always felt just out of reach. The health issues started about 6 months before the stroke. Migraines that left me nauseated. Dizziness that came without warning. Fatigue that sleep couldn't cure. When I mentioned these symptoms to Mom during our monthly dinner, she sighed dramatically. "You always were searching for attention," she said, cutting her chicken into precise pieces. "Remember when you twisted your ankle before your cousin Jennifer's dance recital? You just couldn't stand not being the center of attention." "Mom, I was 10 and the doctor confirmed it was actually sprained," I reminded her. "Well, these headaches sound like stress to me," she continued as if I hadn't spoken. "You probably need a boyfriend. 32 and still single isn't normal, Olivia." That was our relationship. I would reach out with a genuine need, and she would twist it into a personal failing. But still, I kept trying. That's the insidious thing about growing up with conditional love. You keep working for the approval that never comes. 2 weeks before my stroke, we had dinner at her house. Something seemed different. She asked about my projects, actually listened when I answered. When I mentioned feeling dizzy again, she frowned with what looked like concern. "Maybe you should see a doctor, sweetheart," she said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. "You're looking a little pale lately." That small gesture, the touch, the term of endearment, the apparent concern, gave me such hope. Maybe we were turning a corner. Maybe, after all these years, she was finally seeing me as someone worthy of unconditional love. How foolish that hope would prove to be. My best friend Rachel Stevens saw through Catherine from the beginning. We'd been friends since college, and she'd witnessed enough interactions to form a solid opinion. "Your mom is toxic, Liv," she would say. "The way she talks to you isn't normal." I always defended Catherine. She had it rough too. Her parents were even worse. "That explains it, but doesn't excuse it," Rachel would counter. At some point, adults are responsible for breaking destructive patterns. I should have listened to Rachel sooner. But when you're raised to doubt your own perceptions, to believe you're always overreacting, always too sensitive, always wrong, you learn to distrust the very instincts designed to protect you. The weekend before my stroke, I was working overtime on a major presentation. My apartment was strewn with sketches, my refrigerator nearly empty because I hadn't had time to grocery shop. I called Mom to cancel our dinner. "I really need to focus on this project," I explained. "It could mean a promotion if it goes well." "Family should come first, Olivia," she responded coldly. "But I guess I know where I stand with you." The guilt was immediate and overwhelming. I rearranged my entire schedule, stayed up until 3 a.m. working just to keep that dinner appointment. When I arrived, exhausted, she commented that I looked terrible and asked if I was actually taking care of myself. The irony was completely lost on her. That was our last normal interaction before everything changed. Before the stroke that nearly killed me revealed the truth about the woman who gave me life. The morning started like any other Tuesday. I woke at 6:30, showered, and dressed in my favorite navy blue blazer for confidence. This presentation for Horizon Media could elevate our small agency to new heights, and my boss Charlotte had trusted me to lead it. The pressure was enormous but exciting. I noticed the headache as I poured my coffee. Not unusual lately, but more intense than normal. 2 aspirin and determination would have to do. The subway ride downtown was a blur of mental rehearsal and anxiety. By 9, our team was setting up in Horizon's sleek conference room. As I connected my laptop to the projector, my right hand felt strangely numb. I shook it out, assuming I'd slept on it wrong. Their executive team filed in, all power suits and expectations. The stakes couldn't have been higher. 10 minutes into my presentation, the words on my carefully prepared slides began to swim. I blinked hard, trying to focus. When I opened my mouth to continue, my tongue felt heavy, uncooperative. As you can see from these user metrics, my voice sounded wrong, slurred. The room tilted slightly. Charlotte stepped forward. "Olivia, are you okay?" I nodded, trying to push through. "Just need water." But when I reached for the glass, my right arm wouldn't cooperate. The water spilled across my portfolio. Through growing confusion, I saw alarm spread across the clients' faces. "Her face is drooping on one side," someone said. "I'm calling 911, another voice announced. "No," I protested, mortified at ruining the presentation. "I've fine." "Please." Charlotte knelt beside my chair. "Olivia, I think you're having a stroke." My father had the same symptoms. The word stroke seemed absurd. I was 32, health-conscious, young. But deep down, past the denial, fear was building. This wasn't normal. This wasn't stage fright or dehydration. Something was very wrong. The paramedics wanted to transport me immediately, but with limited ambulances available and my symptoms temporarily stabilizing, they reluctantly agreed when I insisted on calling someone to drive me to the nearby emergency room. My first call was to Rachel, my emergency contact and best friend, but it went straight to voicemail. I knew she was on a flight to Chicago for work. With shaking fingers, I called the only other person I could think of, my mother. "Olivia? I'm in the middle of my book club," Catherine answered, irritation evident. "Mom." I struggled to form clear words. "I need help. Something's wrong. The clients think, maybe a stroke? Can you take me to the hospital? I'm downtown." The silence lasted several seconds. "A stroke? Don't be ridiculous. You're too young." "Please," I whispered as Charlotte watched with concern. "I'm scared." Another pause. "Fine. I'll come get you. But this better not be one of your dramatic episodes." The 30 minutes it took her to arrive were excruciating. My symptoms fluctuated, moments of clarity followed by terrifying confusion. Charlotte wanted to call another ambulance, but I insisted Mom was coming. I didn't want to believe she would let me down. Not with something this serious. When Catherine finally arrived, she barely looked at me. Let's go. I had to cancel my entire afternoon for this. Charlotte helped me to Mom's car, giving her clear directions to the nearest hospital. The paramedics said to go straight to the ER and mention possible stroke symptoms for immediate triage. Mom nodded impatiently. As we pulled away, she glanced at me. You're probably just having a panic attack. You always were anxious. The 15-minute drive felt endless. My vision blurred in and out, and forming sentences became increasingly difficult. Instead of concern, Mom filled the silence with complaints. I had to leave right before Susan was going to serve her famous lemon tart. And I'm supposed to have my hair colored at 3. You know Francine books up months in advance. When we arrived at Boston General, Mom pulled up to the emergency entrance. Can you get out here? I need to find parking. I fumbled with the door handle, my coordination deteriorating rapidly. A hospital security guard noticed my struggle and rushed over with a wheelchair. By the time he got me inside, the right side of my body felt leaden, unresponsive. Mom eventually appeared in the waiting room, tapping her foot as I struggled to complete intake forms. The pen kept slipping from my fingers. The nurse behind the counter noticed and came around. "Ma'am, can you smile for me?" she asked gently. My attempt was apparently concerning enough that she immediately called for assistance. Within minutes, I was being wheeled into an assessment area, my mother trailing behind with visible annoyance. BP 170/95, presenting with facial drooping, right side weakness, and speech difficulties, the nurse reported to the attending physician, Dr. Garcia. "How long has she been experiencing symptoms?" he asked, shining a light into my eyes. Before I could struggle through an answer, Mom interjected. "She's always been a bit dramatic when she's stressed. She has a big work presentation today." I managed to correct. Was presenting when started. Dr. Garcia gave Mom a sharp look. "These are classic stroke symptoms, and time is absolutely critical. We need to get her to CT immediately." As they prepared to move me, I heard Mom's phone chime. She checked it and sighed loudly. "Look," she said, addressing no one in particular. "I have my standing hair appointment in 20 minutes. Olivia seems to be in good hands, and there's nothing I can do here anyway." The nurse preparing my froze. "Ma'am, your daughter is having a medical emergency." Mom gathered her designer purse. "And you're taking care of it, which is wonderful. She's always been prone to health anxieties. Call me if it turns out to be something serious." "Mom," I whispered, my heart breaking as my body was failing. "Please stay." She leaned down, patting my arm. "You'll be fine. You're just overwhelmed with work. I can't miss this appointment. Francine is booked solid for months." And then she walked out. Just like that. As I was being evaluated for a life-threatening condition, my own mother chose a hair appointment. The last thing I saw before they wheeled me to CT was her back as she pushed through the emergency room doors without a backward glance. The next hours passed in a blur of tests, medical terminology, and mounting fear. The CT scan confirmed what the medical team already suspected. I was having an ischemic stroke. A blood clot was blocking blood flow to part of my brain. Every minute without treatment meant more brain cells dying. They administered tissue plasminogen activator, a powerful clot-busting drug, and rushed me to a procedure where they threaded a catheter through my arteries to physically remove the clot. Throughout it all, one nurse, Madison, held my hand and spoke softly, reassuringly, providing the comfort my own mother had denied me. That night, as I lay in the ICU with monitors beeping around me, the full reality set in. No one was coming to sit by my bedside. No one was bringing me a change of clothes or advocating with doctors on my behalf. The woman who had given birth to me had walked away when I needed her most, and that abandonment hurt far worse than the stroke itself. The 5 days following my stroke were some of the most challenging of my life. Regaining the ability to speak clearly, to move my right side, to perform basic tasks like holding a spoon. Each small victory was hard-won through tears and frustration. And I faced it all alone. Nurse Madison became my unexpected champion. She was in her late 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense approach that somehow made everything less frightening. When I struggled with speech therapy exercises, she sat with me during her breaks, patiently listening to my halting attempts. My mother left. I confessed on the third day, my words still slightly slurred but improving. For a hair appointment. Madison's face registered shock before she carefully composed it. Some people can't handle medical situations. She's my mother, I whispered, tears falling. If she can't handle it, who can? Madison squeezed my hand. You can. And you are. Look how far you've come already. While my body slowly healed, anxiety about my situation mounted. My health insurance would cover some costs, but not all. My small apartment waited with bills piling up. My job. Would it still be there? Charlotte had sent flowers and called daily, but I knew our small agency couldn't hold my position indefinitely. Each day, I checked my phone, expecting some message from Catherine. On day 4, it finally came. Hope you're feeling better. Susan said her niece had something similar, and it was just a panic attack. Let me know when you're home. No question about my diagnosis. No offer to help. No acknowledgement of abandonment. Just casual dismissal of a life-threatening medical emergency and the expectation that I would maintain the status quo of our relationship. I didn't respond. That evening, Madison came in after her shift ended. She was holding a small envelope. I know this might seem silly, she said, but I bought you a lottery ticket. My grandmother always said that luck comes when you least expect it, often after hardship. I took the envelope, touched by the simple kindness. Thank you. For everything. Just promise to remember us little people when you're a millionaire, she joked. We both laughed, the fantasy of sudden wealth a welcome distraction from my reality. My hospital roommate, Elaine Winters, was recovering from pneumonia. In her 70s with no family nearby, she understood loneliness. We watched game shows together and shared the terrible hospital food, finding unexpected companionship. Family isn't always blood, she told me one night. Sometimes it's the people who show up when everyone else walks away. On my 5th night in the hospital, unable to sleep through the constant disruptions of vital checks and medication administration, I remembered the lottery ticket. The drawing had been that evening. On a whim, I used my phone to check the numbers against those on my ticket. The first number matched, then the second. By the third match, my heart was racing. 4th, 5th, the Powerball, all matching. I checked 3 more times, convinced I was misreading or hallucinating. But the numbers didn't change. According to the website, there was one winning ticket for the $500 million jackpot. And I was holding it. I didn't scream or cry or wake Elaine. Instead, I lay in the darkness, a strange calm settling over me. If this was real, a monumentally improbable if, then everything would change. Not just financially, but in every way that mattered. In the morning, I called the number on the lottery website, my voice shaking as I explained my situation. They confirmed that a winning ticket had been purchased at the location where Madison bought mine, but I would need to go through formal verification processes. We can send a representative to you given your medical situation, the lottery official explained. Please secure your ticket and don't share this information widely until after verification. I asked Madison to lock the ticket in the hospital's secure storage until the representative arrived. She looked at me with wide eyes when I explained, but didn't ask questions, just another kindness among many. Later that day, a serious-looking woman named Vanessa arrived with identification and paperwork. She examined the ticket carefully, checked it against multiple databases, and confirmed what still seemed impossible. Congratulations, Miss Parker. You are indeed the sole winner of the jackpot. Now we need to discuss your options, lump sum versus annuity, tax considerations, and whether you wish to remain anonymous, which I strongly recommend. As Vanessa outlined next steps, my social worker Gabrielle arrived to discuss discharge planning. I had been improving steadily, but would need outpatient therapy and home support. Without family assistance, the options were limited and expensive. I may have a solution to the financial concerns, I said carefully, glancing at Vanessa. Gabrielle looked confused until Vanessa explained the situation professionally. Her expression moved from skepticism to shock to cautious happiness for me. Well, she said finally, this certainly changes your options. But please remember that recovery should remain your priority. Sudden wealth brings its own challenges. She had no idea how prophetic those words would prove to be. That night, alone with my secret and my thoughts, I made my first decision as a soon-to-be wealthy woman. I would not tell Catherine. Not immediately. Not until I understood what this meant for me, for us, for the broken relationship that her emergency room abandonment had finally forced me to acknowledge. The ticket that Madison had given me as a simple gesture of kindness was about to change everything. But first, I had to heal enough to walk out of the hospital on my own 2 feet. News travels fast in hospitals. Despite Vanessa's warnings about confidentiality and my own caution, whispers about my win began circulating among staff. I trusted Madison and Elaine, but others had overheard conversations, seen the official lottery representative. By discharge day, my phone buzzed with a call from the person I least wanted to hear from. Olivia, darling. How are you feeling? I've been so worried. Catherine's voice dripped with a sweetness I hadn't heard in years. Have you? I asked flatly, my speech now mostly back to normal after intensive therapy. Of course. I've been giving you space to recover. You know how hospitals make me anxious since your grandmother passed. My grandmother had died when I was 2. Catherine had never mentioned this anxiety before. I'm being discharged today, I said. Wonderful. I'll come get you. No need. I've arranged transportation. The hospital had organized a medical taxi since I still needed assistance. Don't be silly. What kind of mother would I be if I didn't pick up my own daughter? Catherine insisted, as if she hadn't abandoned me 6 days earlier. The kind who leaves her daughter during a stroke for a hair appointment. I replied, my newfound bluntness surprising even me. Silence followed then. You are obviously getting excellent care, and you know how important appearances are in my social circle. Besides, it turned out fine, didn't it? I ended the call without responding, too emotionally exhausted to engage with her revisionist history. The medical taxi delivered me to my apartment building. The driver helped me up to my 1-bedroom unit, where I found a package outside my door. Inside were grocery essentials, fresh flowers, and a card signed by Charlotte and my coworkers. I hadn't told them about the lottery win either. I had barely settled in when my doorbell rang. Catherine stood there with a gift basket of expensive bath products and a takeout bag from my favorite restaurant. Surprise, she sang out, pushing past me into the apartment. I thought you could use some pampering after your ordeal. I stood speechless as she bustled around, arranging food on plates, straightening my throw pillows, acting as if this level of attention was normal between us. Mom, I finally said, what are you doing here? Taking care of my daughter, of course. She smiled brightly. You gave us all such a scare. Us? Who is us? You were the only family member present and you left. Catherine's smile faltered momentarily before returning, tighter than before. I didn't leave, Olivia. I just stepped out briefly for coffee, and when I came back, they had taken you for tests. The front desk must have misunderstood when I asked where you'd gone. The audacity of the lie stunned me. 3 different nurses saw you leave. You said, and I quote, "Call me if it turns out to be something serious." You knew they suspected a stroke. That's not how I remember it at all, she insisted, rearranging the flowers Charlotte had sent. Hospitals are confusing, high-stress environments. It's easy for wires to get crossed. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with texts from Uncle Thomas, Aunt Patricia, and 2 cousins I rarely spoke with, all suddenly concerned about my health. All mentioned speaking with Catherine about being there for family in crisis. Did you call the entire family about my stroke? I asked. Of course, Catherine replied smoothly. They're concerned about you. Now they are. 6 days later. Catherine sighed dramatically. You're obviously still not feeling well. That medication must be affecting your mood. As she continued rearranging my apartment and talking about her book club, I checked my social media accounts. There was a post from 3 days ago on Catherine's page. Spending the afternoon at the hospital with my brave daughter. These false alarms are so disruptive, but family comes first. Thankfully, just a stress reaction, not the stroke they initially feared. Hashtag proud mom, hashtag family support. 27 sympathetic comments followed. Friends praising her dedication. Complete fiction. While Catherine prepared tea I absolutely must try, my friends from work arrived, Bethany and Mark bringing a homemade lasagna and genuine concern. You look so much better than when we saw you in the hospital, Bethany said, hugging me carefully. Catherine's head snapped up. You visited Olivia in the hospital? Mark nodded. Of course. The whole team rotated visits, so she wouldn't be alone. The implication hung in the air. Catherine recovered quickly. I'm so grateful you could fill in when family obligations kept me away. It's been such a difficult week juggling everything. After my friends left, Catherine's behavior grew increasingly bizarre. She reminisced about all those nights she'd spent by my childhood bedside when I had the flu. She claimed credit for insisting the doctors run stroke protocols. She acted as if she'd been my devoted caretaker throughout. Mom, I finally interrupted. Why are you really here? Her expression flickered before settling on wounded innocence. Because you're my daughter, and you needed me. I needed you 6 days ago. Why now? She began straightening magazines on my coffee table. I heard some interesting news from Susan's daughter, who works at Boston General. Something about a lottery ticket. And there it was. The real reason. I don't know what you're talking about. I lied, buying time. Don't play games, Olivia. Hospital staff are saying someone on your floor won the jackpot. Was it you? Did you win? Before I could answer, my phone rang. The financial advisor Vanessa had recommended. I excused myself to take it in my bedroom, closing the door on Catherine's obvious eavesdropping attempt. When I emerged 20 minutes later, she was scrolling through my mail. That's private, I said, taking the stack from her hands. I'm just helping organize, she replied innocently. Olivia, I think we need to clear the air about what happened at the hospital. I may have been unclear about the severity of your symptoms. Unclear? You literally walked out during a life-threatening emergency. I thought it was just one of your anxiety attacks, she exclaimed. How was I supposed to know the difference? You've always been sensitive about your health. The medical staff told you it was a stroke. They said possible stroke. Doctors are so dramatic these days, worried about lawsuits. She waved dismissively. Anyway, I'm here now, and that's what matters. As if on cue, the doorbell rang again. Uncle Thomas stood there, a man I hadn't seen in 3 years. There's my brave niece, he boomed, entering without invitation. Your mother's been beside herself with worry. The revisionist history campaign was clearly family-wide. Thomas settled onto my couch without invitation. So, Katie tells me you might have had some good news recently? Financial good news? The transparent attempt to confirm my lottery win would have been comical if it weren't so painful. Before I could respond, Catherine interjected. Thomas, please. Olivia's health is our only concern right now. But her eyes told a different story. Calculating, assessing my modest apartment with newfound criticism. You know, she said casually, you really should consider moving back home while you recover. This place is a walk-up, and the stroke has left you so unsteady.
I'm Manatson, he replied.
And I have home health visits arranged. So expensive, she clicked her tongue. On your salary? With medical bills coming? Be practical, Olivia. As the evening progressed, Catherine's facade cracked further. When a notification about my upcoming financial advisor appointment appeared on my phone, which she happened to see, the pretense evaporated. I've been meaning to talk to you about your future, she said. I've had some unexpected expenses lately. The roof needs replacing, and my investment in Susan's daughter's boutique hasn't paid off as expected. I'm sorry to hear that, I replied neutrally. Family helps family, Olivia. You know I've sacrificed everything for you over the years. Single mother, working to put you through college. I had scholarships and student loans I'm still paying off. She continued, as if I hadn't spoken. If you have come into some money, supporting your mother would be the right thing to do. I raised you after all. You left me alone in an emergency room. Catherine's pleasant mask slipped entirely. For God's sake, Olivia. It was just a mini stroke or whatever. You're fine now, aren't you? Stop being so dramatic. I could have died, Mom. The doctor said if treatment had been delayed much longer, I might have suffered permanent brain damage. But you didn't. And now you're just trying to make me feel guilty because you're embarrassed about making a scene at work. Her voice rose sharply. Always so self-centered. Thomas looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Enablers rarely intervene. I think you should leave, I said quietly. Not until we discuss what you're planning to do with the money, Catherine demanded, dropping all pretense. I deserve at least $1 million for raising you alone after your father abandoned us. And that's when I snapped. He didn't abandon us. You drove him away, didn't you? Just like you try to drive away anyone who might care about me more than you do. That's ridiculous. William left because he couldn't handle responsibility. No, I said, a lifetime of doubt suddenly clearing. He left because of you. Because you're toxic, manipulative, and incapable of genuine love. Catherine's face contorted with rage. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay maternal devotion? By believing whatever lies your father told you. He hasn't told me anything. We haven't spoken in 24 years because you made sure of it. But I'm starting to see clearly for the first time. She grabbed her purse, face flushed with anger. When you've calmed down and stopped this childish tantrum, call me. We have financial matters to discuss. As she stormed out, Thomas trailing awkwardly behind, she delivered her parting shot. Without me, you'd have nothing. Remember that before you make decisions about any money that might come your way. The door slammed behind them, leaving blessed silence. I sank onto my couch, physically and emotionally drained. My phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. You're clearly still affected by your medication. When you're thinking clearly again, we'll talk about appropriate financial support for the mother who sacrificed everything for you. That night, alone in my apartment, I finally allowed myself to cry, not for the mother who had just revealed her true self so completely, but for the little girl who had spent her entire life trying to earn love that should have been unconditional. The stroke had nearly killed me, but in a strange way, it had also saved me, forcing me to see what I had been blind to for 3 decades. Sometimes it takes almost losing your life to find the courage to actually live it. The day after Catherine's visit, I had my first session with Dr. Leah Bennett, a therapist specializing in stroke recovery and family trauma. Originally scheduled to address post-stroke anxiety, our session quickly shifted focus. She left me during a stroke for a hair appointment, I explained, still struggling to believe it myself. Then came back when she heard rumors about the lottery win. Dr. Bennett's expression remained professionally neutral, but her eyes reflected understanding. Sometimes crisis strips away pretense and shows us people's true priorities. 32 years of pretending she was just tough or had high standards, and it took nearly dying to see the truth. Over the next hour, Dr. Bennett helped me identify patterns I'd normalized, the emotional manipulation, the subtle undermining, the rewriting of history. Words like narcissistic personality traits and emotional abuse entered our vocabulary, terms I'd never applied to my own life. The lottery win complicates things, I admitted. If she was toxic before, what happens when $500 million enters the equation? That's a valid concern, Dr. Bennett acknowledged. Sudden wealth often amplifies existing relationship dynamics rather than changing them. 2 days later, I got a first-hand demonstration of this truth. I had arranged to meet with lottery officials to complete paperwork and make decisions about payment options. Vanessa had stressed the importance of privacy, so we scheduled the meeting at their secure offices downtown. I arrived early, accompanied by the lawyer Vanessa had recommended, Andrea Montgomery. As we reviewed documents in a private conference room, a commotion erupted in the reception area. I'm her mother. I have every right to be part of this process. Catherine's voice carried clearly through the door. Andrea raised an eyebrow. Is that? I nodded, mortified. My mother. She wasn't invited. Vanessa stepped out to address the situation while Andrea and I continued reviewing the annuity options. Minutes later, security was called. Catherine had refused to leave, insisting that as my caregiver during medical recovery, she needed to protect my interests. When the conference room door opened, Catherine attempted to push past security. Olivia, tell them who I am. These people are trying to take advantage of you while you're vulnerable. The lottery officials looked alarmed. Andrea stepped forward smoothly. Ms. Parker is represented by counsel and has explicitly requested privacy during these proceedings. Please respect her wishes. Catherine's performance shifted instantly from concerned mother to wounded victim. My own daughter, after all I've sacrificed, turning against family. Tears appeared on cue. Security escorted her from the building as she called back. Family should stick together, Olivia. Blood is thicker than water. Andrea turned to me once Catherine was gone. I strongly recommend a restraining order based on what I just witnessed. The meeting proceeded, but Catherine's intrusion had shaken me. Back at my apartment, I found 17 voice messages and 32 texts, ranging from guilt-inducing, "How could you humiliate your mother this way?" to threatening, "I'll tell everyone about your breakdown last year if you don't include me." The breakdown she referenced had been severe exhaustion requiring a brief hospital stay, something Catherine had mocked at the time as millennial burnout. After consulting with Andrea, I blocked Catherine's number and social media accounts. The next day, she began using relatives' phones to contact me, each message more desperate and manipulative than the last. Your grandmother would be ashamed of your selfishness. I'll have to sell the house where you grew up if you don't help. I've spoken to a lawyer about my parental rights to a portion of your winnings. Andrea assured me the last claim was legally baseless, but suggested we arrange a final meeting in her office to establish clear boundaries, documented by witnesses. Sometimes a formal line in the sand is necessary, she explained. It creates a legal record of your position and intentions. We scheduled the meeting for the following Tuesday. Andrea sent an official invitation to Catherine specifying that it would be our final discussion of any financial matters and that I would be represented by counsel. Catherine arrived with reinforcements, Uncle Thomas, Aunt Patricia, and a cousin I barely knew. Andrea had anticipated this and arranged for her associate to join us, along with a paralegal to document everything. Olivia, Catherine began, her voice honey-sweet. We're here as family who love you and want to protect you during this overwhelming time. That's not why you're here, I replied calmly. You're here because you want money. How dare you? Aunt Patricia gasped. Your mother has done everything for you, including abandoning me during a life-threatening medical emergency, I stated flatly. Let's not pretend this meeting is about anything except what portion of my lottery winnings you feel entitled to. Catherine's expression hardened, the mask of maternal concern slipping. Family supports family, Olivia. Your windfall is a blessing meant to be shared. You've never shared anything with me except criticism and conditional approval, I replied. But today isn't about the past. It's about establishing the future. Andrea placed a document on the table. Ms. Parker has made her decisions regarding her lottery winnings. She will be establishing a medical research foundation focused on stroke prevention and recovery. Her financial obligations to family members are outlined here. Catherine snatched up the paper, scanning it rapidly. Her face flushed deep red. Nothing? You're giving us nothing? After everything I've done for you? What exactly have you done, Mom? Please, enlighten everyone in this room about your maternal sacrifices. I raised you alone after your father abandoned us. He didn't abandon us. He left you, and you systematically prevented him from maintaining a relationship with me. That's a lie. Catherine slammed her hand on the table. I've spoken with him, I said quietly. The room fell silent. This was new information, even to Andrea. When? Catherine demanded. Yesterday. It wasn't hard to find him once I actually tried. He's been living in Portland for 20 years. Has sent birthday cards every year that mysteriously never reached me. Called holidays until you changed our number. Eventually gave up when I turned 18 and didn't contact him because I believed your lies about him not wanting me. Catherine's face had gone pale. He turned you against me. I always knew he would.
No, ma'am.
You did that all by yourself when you walked out of that emergency room. I leaned forward. He told me everything. How you threatened to make it impossible for him to see me if he didn't agree to your divorce terms. How you told him I was confused and didn't want to speak to him when he called. 24 years of systematic alienation because you couldn't stand the idea of sharing me, even with my own father. Thomas shifted uncomfortably. Katie, is this true? Catherine ignored him, her focus laser-sharp on me. So you found William and immediately decided to believe his version of events? How convenient for him to rewrite history now that you're wealthy. I didn't tell him about the lottery win, I said quietly. Unlike you, he asked about my health, my recovery, my life. Not once did he mention money. You always were gullible, Catherine sneered, the last pretense of maternal concern evaporating. First your work friends, then the hospital staff filling your head with nonsense about me, now your deadbeat father. This meeting is over, Andrea intervened, standing. My client has made her position clear. The document outlines her decision. No financial support to family members who have demonstrated exploitation and manipulation. Catherine stood so abruptly her chair toppled backward. After everything I've sacrificed. I gave you life, Olivia. I wish I never had you. The words hung in the air, shocking even Thomas and Patricia. And there it is, I said softly. The truth at last. Security appeared at the door. Andrea had apparently pressed a silent button. As they escorted my family out, Catherine's parting words echoed through the office. You'll regret this. Family is all that matters in the end. That evening, alone in my apartment, the emotional adrenaline finally crashed. I sobbed until my chest ached, grieving not the loss of my mother. I never really had the mother I deserved, but the death of hope that she might someday become that person. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Local station WBCN had run a story. Local woman abandons stroke victim daughter now refusing to share lottery winnings. Catherine had gone to the media with her twisted version of events. According to the article, she claimed I'd had a minor health scare that she'd helped me through, only for me to turn against her after my lottery win due to medication affecting my judgment. The reporter had made minimal effort to verify her claims. I turned off my phone, curled into a ball on my couch, and questioned every decision. Was $500 million worth this pain? Was anything? In the darkness of that moment, I understood that this wasn't really about money. The lottery win had simply exposed what had always been true. Without the stroke and the sudden wealth, I might have spent another 30 years seeking approval from someone incapable of giving it. Sometimes breakdowns lead to breakthroughs. As the tears finally subsided, clarity emerged. I couldn't choose my biological family, but I could choose my response to them. I could choose my future. I could choose myself. That night, I made the hardest and healthiest decision of my life, to cut Catherine out of my life permanently. Not out of vengeance, but self-preservation. Some relationships simply cannot be saved, especially when one person values control more than connection. The money hadn't changed me. It had simply given me options I never had before, including the option to enforce boundaries with someone who had never respected them. The morning after my breaking point, I woke with unexpected lightness. The decision to remove Catherine from my life felt like putting down a boulder I'd been carrying since childhood. There would be challenges ahead, but for the first time, I was choosing my own path without seeking anyone else's approval. Andrea helped me file paperwork for a legal name change. Olivia Parker would become Olivia Bennett, adopting my therapist's surname as a symbol of the healing journey ahead. We also began the process of establishing a trust and foundation structure that would protect my privacy and enable charitable work. My first financial decisions were pragmatic rather than extravagant. I paid off my medical bills and student loans. I arranged for the purchase of a secure apartment in a gated community across town. I established an emergency fund for Charlotte's design agency to ensure my colleagues' job security during my absence. The media frenzy following Catherine's interview intensified when I declined to comment. Speculation ran wild. I was mentally unstable, ungrateful, being manipulated by financial advisors. Andrea handled press inquiries with a simple statement. Miss Parker values her privacy during her medical recovery and will not be commenting on family matters. 2 weeks after the confrontation at Andrea's office, Rachel returned from her extended work trip to Chicago. I had kept the lottery win secret even from her, wanting to process everything first. When I finally told her over dinner at my apartment, her reaction was everything a true friend should be. "Holy shit," she whispered after the initial shock. "Are you okay? Not about the money, about everything with your mom." That question, prioritizing my emotional well-being over my sudden wealth, confirmed why Rachel had been my best friend for over a decade. "I'm getting there," I answered honestly. "It's been the worst and best month of my life." "What can I do?" she asked, reaching for my hand. Actually, I hesitated. "Would you consider moving in with me temporarily? The new apartment has a guest suite, and the doctors still want someone around during my recovery." Rachel didn't hesitate. "Of course. I'll give notice on my place tomorrow." With Rachel's support, I navigated the complex logistics of suddenly managing substantial wealth while still recovering from a stroke. She attended appointments with me when needed, screened visitors, and provided normalcy amid chaos. Most importantly, she treated me exactly the same as before. No walking on eggshells, no subtle requests for financial help, just authentic friendship. The foundation I established, the New Beginning Stroke Recovery Fund, became my passion project. We would fund research, support patients without resources, and educate the public about stroke symptoms in young adults. Nurse Madison from the hospital agreed to join as an advisor, her practical experience invaluable. 1 month after the lottery win, I felt strong enough to reach out to my father, William Parker. Our first phone conversation had been emotional but brief. Now I suggested meeting in person. We arranged to meet at a quiet restaurant in a hotel where I had taken a suite under my new name. When he walked in, tall, with gray-streaked dark hair and my same eyes, something locked into place inside me. Here was the missing piece of my history. "Olivia," he said, voice breaking slightly. "You look so much like my mother." Over dinner, William filled in 24 years of blanks. How Catherine had systematically blocked his access, telling courts he was unstable and threatening. How she'd returned his child support checks while telling me he never sent any. How she'd moved and changed phone numbers whenever he located us. "I should have fought harder," he said, regret etching his features. "I let her convince me that pushing would only make things worse for you." "She was very convincing," I replied, thinking of all the ways Catherine had rewritten reality throughout my life. William had remarried 15 years ago to Laura, a kindergarten teacher. They had no children together, a choice he admitted was partly due to the pain of losing me. He showed me a photo album he'd maintained all these years, newspaper clippings of my high school art award, my college graduation announcement he'd found online, anything that gave him glimpses of my life. "I never stopped thinking about you," he said. "Not for one day." We agreed to proceed slowly, building a relationship without pressure or expectation. I didn't tell him about the lottery win yet, not out of distrust, but wanting to establish a connection based on genuine family bonds rather than financial considerations. As I rebuilt my identity and relationships, Catherine continued her campaign to portray herself as the victim. She gave follow-up interviews claiming I was being manipulated by financial vultures. She created social media posts about standing by your children even when they break your heart. She even sent a certified letter declaring she would forgive me if I came to my senses. Each attempt at contact was documented and forwarded to Andrea. The restraining order remained in place, and security at my new building had her photo. The foundation's offices were similarly protected. Gradually, her efforts decreased as she realized I was serious about maintaining boundaries. 3 months after the lottery win, I took my first real vacation, a quiet 2 weeks at a private beach house in Maine. Rachel joined for the first week, then William and Laura visited for 2 days. The simple pleasure of walking along the shore, watching sunsets, and breathing salt air felt like medicine for my soul. On the last night of the vacation, I stood alone on the deck watching moonlight on the waves. My phone, which I rarely check now, buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I know you hate me now, but one day you'll understand a mother's love. When you're ready to apologize, I'll be waiting. Catherine." In the past, such a message would have sent me spiraling into guilt and self-doubt. Now I simply forwarded it to Andrea for documentation, blocked the number, and returned my attention to the magnificent ocean before me. Catherine no longer had the power to disturb my peace. Back in Boston, I eased into a new routine. Physically, my recovery had progressed remarkably well. The neurologist attributed this partly to my age and general health, but also to the intensive therapy the lottery win had made possible. The slight residual weakness in my right hand would likely remain permanent, but adaptation was becoming second nature. I began dating again, cautiously, selectively. Michael Chun, an architectural engineer I met through a foundation event, attracted me with his calm intelligence and complete disinterest in my financial status. He had his own successful career and lived modestly by choice, valuing experiences over possessions. Our third date was volunteering together at a stroke survivors support group. As the 6-month anniversary of my stroke approached, I received an unexpected message from Madison, my nurse from the hospital. "Remember that lottery ticket? The one that changed everything? I just realized it was exactly what you needed, not the money, but the freedom it gave you to break unhealthy patterns. Some people think money changes who you are, but I think it just reveals it. And you, Olivia, were always the strong. You just needed permission to believe it." Her words resonated deeply. The money hadn't changed me fundamentally. It had simply removed the financial barriers to enforcing boundaries I should have established years ago. It had given me options that economic vulnerability had previously limited. For my 33rd birthday, I made anonymous donations to Boston General's stroke unit, funding specialized equipment and staff training. I established a nursing scholarship in Madison's name without telling her. She would discover it when the hospital held its annual fundraising gala. My new home became a gathering place for the chosen family I was building: Rachel and her boyfriend, colleagues from work who had supported me, new friends from the foundation, William and Laura during their visits. For the first time, I lived in a space filled with genuine warmth and acceptance rather than criticism and conditional approval. Catherine made one final grand attempt at reconciliation, or rather, at access to my wealth. She appeared at the foundation's first public fundraiser, somehow obtaining a ticket despite security precautions. "Olivia," she approached as I spoke with donors, "I'm so proud of what you're doing. We should put our differences aside for such an important cause." Before I could respond, Rachel stepped between us. "Security will escort you out now, or you can leave quietly on your own. Your choice." Catherine's face hardened. "She's my daughter."
No, Racheli Plaiz Gamli.
"She's your biological child. You forfeited the privilege of being her mother when you abandoned her during a medical emergency." As security appeared, Catherine gathered her dignity around her like a cloak. "You'll regret shutting out family, Olivia. Blood is all that matters in the end." I finally spoke, my voice steady. "If that were true, you would have stayed at the hospital. Goodbye, Catherine." As she was escorted out, I felt no anger, no regret, no lingering attachment, just a calm certainty that I had made the right choice for my well-being. The last thread connecting me to toxic patterns had been severed. That night, I updated my will and trust documents, ensuring Catherine would never have access to any resources for my estate. Instead, I established educational trusts for several cousins' children and substantial funding for stroke research. The future, not the past, would be my legacy. 1 year after the stroke that nearly killed me and the lottery when that freed me, I stood at the podium at the New Beginnings Foundation's anniversary gala. The journey from hospital bed to this moment had been extraordinary by any measure. A year ago, I began. I couldn't speak clearly. I couldn't hold a pen. I couldn't imagine a future where I would feel whole again. But here I am, not despite those challenges, but because of what they taught me. The audience, medical professionals, stroke survivors, donors, and friends, listened attentively as I shared my recovery journey. What I didn't share publicly was how the stroke had revealed the toxic foundation of my relationship with Catherine, or how the lottery win had given me the resources to rebuild my life on healthier ground. My physical recovery had plateaued at about 95% of my pre-stroke abilities. The neurologist considered this remarkable, but I knew the emotional healing had been the greater challenge and achievement. Therapy with Dr. Bennett continued, less frequently, but still valuable. We had worked through layers of conditioning from my childhood, the constant seeking of approval, the internalized criticism, the belief that love had to be earned through perfection. The most profound shift, I told her in a recent session, is that I no longer feel responsible for other people's emotions. Catherine trained me to manage her feelings at the expense of my own. That's an important boundary, Dr. Bennett agreed, especially with narcissistic personalities. The foundation had exceeded all expectations, funding 3 promising research initiatives and supporting over 100 families affected by stroke. We had created educational materials specifically targeting young adults, helping them recognize symptoms that might otherwise be dismissed. My relationship with William had deepened gradually into something authentic and healing. He had been exactly the father I needed, patient, respectful of boundaries, genuinely interested in my life without imposing expectations. Laura had become a friend in her own right, never attempting to claim a maternal role but offering warmth and perspective. 6 months earlier, I had finally told them about the lottery win, once I was confident our reconnection was based on genuine family bonds. William's reaction had been concern for my well-being rather than interest in my wealth, further confirmation that I had misjudged him based on Catherine's lies. My chosen family had expanded in unexpected ways. Elaine, my hospital roommate, now lived in a comfortable senior community funded by an anonymous donation, and we met monthly for lunch. Madison had used the nursing scholarship to pursue advanced certification and joined the foundation's advisory board. Michael and I were discussing moving in together, taking things slowly and thoughtfully. Catherine made her final attempt at contact through an expensive law firm, claiming entitlement to financial support based on her status as my mother. Andrea handled it efficiently, providing documentation of the abandonment during a medical emergency and subsequent harassment. The matter was dismissed without requiring my presence. The freedom from toxic obligation felt like breathing clean air after a lifetime in smoke. I no longer jumped when my phone rang. I no longer rehearsed conversations to avoid criticism. I no longer apologized for existing. The money, substantial as it was, had never been about luxury. I lived comfortably, but not extravagantly. The true value of the lottery win had been the options it provided, the ability to prioritize health over work, to create distance from toxic influences, to help others without depleting myself. As I concluded my speech at the gala, I shared the perspective that only experience can teach. Wealth can buy many things: security, comfort, influence. But it cannot buy health, genuine connection, or inner peace. Those must be cultivated through difficult choices and authentic living. Sometimes the greatest gift is the clarity to recognize what truly matters and the courage to align your life accordingly. Later that evening, as supporters mingled and celebrated the foundation's achievements, Rachel joined me on the balcony overlooking the city lights. "Penny for your thoughts," she said, handing me a sparkling water. "I was just thinking about how differently this year might have gone," I replied. "If I hadn't had the stroke, I might never have seen Catherine clearly. If Madison hadn't bought that lottery ticket, I might not have had the resources to enforce boundaries." "You would have gotten there eventually," Rachel said confidently. "The money just accelerated the process." Perhaps she was right. Perhaps the strength had always been within me, waiting for permission to emerge. The stroke had stripped away pretense, the lottery had removed practical barriers, but the decision to value myself had been mine alone. As I looked out over the city where I had rebuilt my life, I felt profound gratitude, not for the money, but for the clarity that had come through crisis. The mother who should have protected me had walked away during my greatest vulnerability, but in doing so, she had inadvertently set me free. Sometimes the people who hurt us most give us the greatest gift without intending to, the opportunity to discover our own resilience. My mother abandoned me during a stroke, and a week later I won $500 million. But the real prize wasn't the money. It was the discovery that I had always been enough, exactly as I was. Have you ever had to make the difficult decision to cut ties with family for your own well-being? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that prioritizing your health and peace isn't selfish. It's essential. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the greatest act of self-love is walking away from those who cannot truly love you.